The great hall of the Imperial War Council was silent. Hundreds of officers stood in perfect lines beneath the glowing banners of conquest. At the center of the hall stood Commander Varric, the oldest living war hero of the Empire. His armor was covered in medals. His face carried scars from battles across the galaxy. He had defeated 20 civilizations. He had never lost. But today something was different. His hands were not steady. The young officers noticed it first. The commander was afraid. The High Council waited for him to speak. They expected another victory report, another tale of glory, another request for more ships. Instead, he said something no one expected. We should not fight the humans. A quiet murmur moved through the chamber. Some officers laughed softly. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They were smaller. Their fleets were fewer. Their territory was limited. To the Empire, they looked harmless. The High Chancellor leaned forward. Commander Varric, you defeated the Craven swarms. You crushed the Dralith warlords. Why would humans be different? Varric did not answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the holographic map floating in the air. He finally spoke in a low, steady voice. Because they do not fight like us. A projection changed to show the first encounter with a human fleet. It had happened near a disputed border system. Imperial scouts had detected human ships mining resources in space the Empire considered its own. The Empire sent a warning. Humans replied calmly. They said they believed the region was neutral. The Empire sent a fleet anyway. When the fleets met, the humans retreated. They did not challenge Imperial firepower. They did not shout threats. They did not attempt negotiation. They simply pulled back. The council members nodded with satisfaction. See, the Chancellor said they feared us. Varric shook his head slowly. No, they were studying us. The chamber grew quiet. He explained how human ships kept distance, how they changed formations in small, subtle ways, how their sensors were always active, how they recorded every movement of the Imperial fleet. Then something strange happened. 3 days later, Imperial supply ships began to disappear. Not destroyed, not attacked, just gone. Communication relays failed in remote sectors. Navigation beacons were hacked. Small border outposts reported false coordinates that led ships into empty space. The Empire thought it was coincidence. Varric knew it was not. Humans were testing weaknesses, mapping patterns, learning reaction times. The Chancellor frowned. That does not make them strong. Varric looked directly at him. Strength is not always loud. He described the second encounter. This time humans did not retreat. They arrived early. They controlled asteroid positions. They blocked escape routes. They attacked only command vessels. They ignored smaller ships. They focused on leadership. Imperial officers began to panic. Humans did not celebrate victories. They did not chase fleeing ships. They did not waste energy. They were precise, calm, calculated. Varric paused. He remembered the moment clearly. During the battle, he had opened a direct channel to a human commander. He expected anger, rage, fear. Instead, the human voice was steady. We do not want this war, the human had said. But if you continue, we will finish it. There was no emotion in that voice, only certainty. Varric returned to the present. The council chamber felt colder. They are patient, he continued. They lose small battles to win large ones. They sacrifice ships to protect civilians. They learn faster than any species I've seen. An officer stepped forward. Are you saying they can defeat us? Varric did not hesitate. Yes. The word echoed across the hall. If we invade their core systems, we will not return. They are not building fleets for pride. They are building them for survival. And species that fight for survival never surrender. Silence filled the chamber. Some officers looked uncertain. Others still smiled with disbelief. The Chancellor rose slowly. Commander Varric, you have served well. But perhaps age has made you cautious. Humans are young, inexperienced. We are the Empire. Varric closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was no fear left. Only truth. I have seen fear in the eyes of my enemies for centuries. He said quietly, the only time I saw confidence was in the eyes of a human commander. And that is why we should not fight them. The Council did not listen. 3 cycles after Commander Varric gave his warning, the Empire voted for expansion. A massive invasion fleet was assembled near the human border. Thousands of warships gathered in perfect formation. Battleships, destroyers, carriers, supply vessels. It was the largest force the Empire had deployed in a century. Varric stood at the observation deck of the flagship. He had been ordered to lead the invasion, not because they trusted his fear, but because they trusted his experience. Young officers around him spoke with excitement. They believed this would be an easy victory. Humans had fewer ships, less territory, less history. The fleet jumped into human-controlled space. No resistance greeted them. No defense grid. No warning signal. No patrol ships. Only silence. The human border stations were empty. Abandoned, but not destroyed. Equipment was removed carefully. Data cores wiped clean. They left nothing behind. The young captains laughed. They are running. Varric said nothing. He remembered the first retreat near the neutral zone. He remembered how humans had studied them. The fleet advanced deeper. Still no opposition. Mining colonies were empty. Civilian habitats powered down. It felt wrong. Too clean. Too organized. As if the humans had prepared for this exact movement. Varric ordered long-range scans. Nothing unusual appeared. No hidden fleets. No energy spikes. Just stars and empty space. Then the first supply convoy vanished. No distress call. No debris. One moment it was there. The next it was gone. Communication officers blamed malfunction. Until a second convoy disappeared. Then a third. Panic did not spread yet. But unease did. Navigation systems began showing minor errors. Small coordinate shifts. Tiny miscalculations. Enough to force ships to adjust formation constantly. Varric studied the patterns. They were not random. They were testing reaction time, measuring how quickly the Empire corrected mistakes. Suddenly, an asteroid field ahead shifted. Thousands of rocks moved slightly out of orbit. Not enough to cause alarm, but enough to narrow passage routes. Who altered those vectors? Varric demanded. No answer. No human ships detected. Yet something was guiding the battlefield. The fleet pushed forward into the asteroid field. That was when the first attack came. Not from the front, not from the rear, but from inside the formation. Small human strike craft emerged from hidden positions within the asteroids. They targeted communication arrays first, then command relays. They ignored heavy armor. They ignored main guns. Within minutes, the Imperial fleet was divided into isolated groups, each group blind to the others. Varric ordered full defensive formation, but human ships did not stay. They struck and vanished, again and again, never staying long enough to be targeted, never wasting energy. A young captain shouted that this was cowardice. Varric whispered no. This is patience. Another wave hit supply ships. Fuel reserves exploded, not from heavy fire, but from precise internal strikes, as if humans knew exactly where to aim. Imperial destroyers fired into the asteroids, destroying empty rocks, wasting ammunition. Humans never appeared where expected. They attacked where fear was weakest. Hours passed. The once perfect Imperial formation now looked scattered, tired, confused. Then a transmission cut through every channel. Clear, calm, human voice. You were warned. Withdraw, or this will escalate. Some officers demanded immediate pursuit. Others called it a bluff. Varric felt the weight of truth. This was only the beginning. Humans were not trying to destroy the fleet. They were showing control. They were shaping the battlefield without committing full force. Another explosion rocked the left flank. A carrier lost engines. Not destroyed, just disabled. Human ships passed close enough to be seen. Their pilots calm. Their movements exact. No panic. No rush. Only focus. Varric finally understood the full danger. Humans did not fight to prove strength. They fought to remove options. Step by step. Cutting supply. Breaking communication. Isolating command. The Imperial fleet was not being attacked. It was being dismantled. and somewhere beyond the asteroid field, hidden in the darkness, the main human force was waiting, watching, ready to strike, if the Empire refused to retreat. The asteroid field grew silent after the last strike. Imperial ships drifted in broken formations, some without engines, some without communication, some without command. Commander Varric stood on the bridge of the flagship watching the tactical map flicker with missing signals. He knew this pattern. Humans were not attacking randomly. They were guiding the Empire deeper, pulling them forward step by step, away from safe retreat, away from stable supply lines. The young captains demanded counterattack. They wanted to chase the human strike craft. Varric refused. Hold formation, he ordered. But formation no longer meant control. Navigation systems were still adjusting. Coordinates shifting by small degrees. Tiny errors creating large distance between ships. The fleet looked strong from far away, but inside it was fractured. Then something new appeared. Not ships, not weapons, but signals. Thousands of false readings filled the scanners. Ghost fleets, fake engine trails, imaginary energy spikes. Officers shouted conflicting reports. Targets on the left. No targets on the left. Incoming missiles. No incoming missiles. Confusion spread faster than fear. Varric felt the trap closing. Humans were not overpowering them. They were overwhelming their perception, blinding them with information. Suddenly, a cruiser near the center of the formation fired on another Imperial ship. The captain believed it was a disguised human vessel. The mistake cost hundreds of lives. Trust inside the fleet began to weaken. Varric opened a direct, fleet-wide channel. Stay calm, he commanded. Verify targets before firing. But humans had already planted doubt. Another wave of strike craft emerged. This time they attacked shield generators. Not destroying them, just weakening them. Imperial ships, now, had to divert power from weapons to maintain defense. Slowly their advantage disappeared. Varric noticed something terrifying. Human ships never chased fleeing targets. They always attacked strategic positions. Fuel reserves, communication towers, navigation cores. They were cutting the skeleton of the fleet, not the armor. Hours passed, and the Imperial fleet pushed beyond the asteroid field. They entered open space again. Many officers believed the worst was over. Then the stars ahead dimmed. Massive structures powered on. Hidden platforms that had been dark until now. Human defense stations activated in perfect alignment. A wall of light formed across the sector. Not chaotic, not rushed. Prepared. The real human fleet finally appeared. Hundreds of capital ships emerging from stealth positions. Larger than expected. Calmer than expected. No wild maneuvers. No loud threats. Just silent positioning. Varric felt the truth settle in his chest. Everything before this had been preparation. The strike craft. The supply disruption. The false signals. All of it was shaping the Imperial fleet into a predictable path. The humans had known exactly where the Empire would move. They had studied them, calculated reaction time, understood pride. Now the Empire stood directly in front of a fully prepared defense line. A human commander opened communication. We asked you to withdraw. The voice was steady. No anger. No fear. You chose advance. Varric stepped forward. This conflict can still end. The human paused briefly, then answered. It can. Order retreat. Behind the Imperial formation, more signals appeared. Another hidden human fleet closing the path back. Not firing, just blocking. The Empire was surrounded. Not in chaos, but in control. Young officers looked to Varric, waiting for heroic command, waiting for aggressive strike order. Varric understood something painful. If they attacked, now the Empire would lose everything. Humans had planned for months, maybe years. Every movement calculated, every weakness mapped. This was not war born from rage. This was strategy built on patience. The human voice spoke again. We do not seek your destruction. We seek balance. Withdraw. And live. The choice hung in silence. Imperial pride against survival. And Commander Varric knew. This was the moment history would remember. Either as the fall of an empire, or the day it learned to listen. Silence filled the bridge of the flagship. Thousands of Imperial ships waited for a single command. Behind them, another human fleet blocked retreat. In front of them, a wall of prepared defenses glowed in cold light. They were surrounded, not by chaos, but by design. Young officers looked at Commander Varric with hope and fear. They expected him to order attack. That was what Imperial heroes always did. Fight until victory or death. But Varric had seen enough. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships hold fire. The words shocked the bridge. Murmurs spread quickly. Some captains protested. They said the Empire must not show weakness. Varric ignored them. He opened direct communication with the human flagship. The screen lit up with the image of a human commander. Calm eye, steady posture. No armor covered him. Only a simple uniform. You have proven your point, Varric said. Why go this far? The human answered without delay. Because warnings without consequences are ignored. You were told not to advance. You chose to test us. Varric felt the weight of truth. Yes, he replied. The human commander leaned slightly forward. We studied your empire for years. We observed your expansion. We watched smaller systems disappear. You call it order. Others call it conquest. We do not allow imbalance. Behind Varric, officers shifted uncomfortably. The human continued. This battle was never about territory. It was about demonstrating limits. You are strong, but predictable. You rely on power and fear. We rely on preparation and patience. The tactical display showed energy readings building across the human defense line, not charging weapons, but activating containment grids. Varric understood. If they fire now, the humans would disable every ship at once. Not destroy, just neutralize. The human spoke again. We do not want your collapse. A broken empire creates chaos. We want stability. Withdraw from disputed systems. Respect neutral borders. And this ends here. Varric looked around the bridge. Some officers were pale, others angry, none confident. He remembered the first battle, the supply ships vanishing, the false signals, the calculated strikes. This was never about winning. It was about control. He made his decision. He returned to fleet-wide channel. All Imperial vessels prepare controlled retreat. Maintain formation. No aggressive movement. Shock filled the bridge, but obedience followed. Slowly, the massive Imperial fleet began to pull back. Human ships did not pursue. They did not celebrate. They simply adjusted position, ensuring safe withdrawal. As the distance grew between the two forces, tension slowly eased. The human commander spoke one final time. Learn from this. Strength without restraint leads to ruin. Then the channel closed. The human fleets faded back into formation. Defense grids powered down. The path to Imperial space reopened. Varric remained still as his fleet exited human territory. Not a single shot fired in the final hour. Yet defeat was clear. Not defeat by destruction, but defeat by understanding. When the fleet finally crossed back into Imperial-controlled space, officers waited for orders. Some expected punishment. Some expected preparation for revenge. Instead, Varric transmitted a simple message to the High Council. Humans do not fear us. They prepared for us. And if we continue this path, we will not survive the next encounter. The reply from the Council was slow. Pride struggled against reality. But the reports from hundreds of ships told the same story. Systems disabled. Formations predicted. Strategy countered. This was not luck. It was design. As the fleet returned home, Varric stood alone at the observation window. Stars passed quietly. For the first time in centuries, the Empire had been forced to step back. Not by greater firepower, but by greater foresight. And deep inside he knew, if the Council ignored him again, the next lesson would not be so gentle. The Imperial fleet returned home in silence. No victory music played. No banners were raised. Thousands of ships entered the capital sector, carrying a lesson no one wanted to admit. Commander Varric stood once again inside the Great War Chamber, the same hall where he had first given his warning. This time no one laughed. The council members looked older, heavier. Reports filled the chamber screens. Every tactical movement analyzed. Every mistake exposed. Every prediction made by the humans confirmed. The Empire had not been defeated, but had been completely outmaneuvered. A young strategist spoke first. If they wanted, they could have destroyed us. Yes, Varric replied, but they chose not to. That is what should frighten you. The chamber doors opened suddenly. An urgent transmission arrived from a distant Imperial outpost, not near human territory. Far beyond it, a frontier mining world reported unknown vessels entering orbit. The council stiffened. Images appeared on the central display. Dark shapes, silent, motionless, not attacking. The same design as the human strike craft, but larger, much larger. Panic rose quickly. Have they decided to strike after all? One minister whispered. Varric studied the feed carefully. The ships were positioned around the planet, not above cities, not above defense platforms, but above unstable tectonic regions. Sensors showed rising planetary stress levels. A chain reaction earthquake was building. If triggered, it would tear the colony apart. Suddenly, beams of controlled energy extended from the dark ships. Not destructive, stabilizing. They were reinforcing the crust, preventing collapse. Engineers confirmed it. The human vessels were saving the colony, not attacking it. The council stared in disbelief. Why would they help us? One officer asked. Varric answered quietly. Because stability benefits everyone. Hours later, the tectonic stress dropped. The colony was safe. The human ships transmitted a short message. Balance maintained. Then they vanished. Not retreating, simply no longer present. The chamber felt different now. Fear was still there, but mixed with something new. Understanding. The Empire had believed humans were a threat, but now they saw something more complex. A species willing to fight fiercely, but also willing to protect. Varric spoke again. They are not trying to replace us. They are preventing collapse. Our expansion created instability. They corrected it. If we continue to expand blindly, they will correct us again, and next time we may not be spared. A long silence followed. The High Chancellor finally stood. Prepare a diplomatic channel. Formal recognition of neutral systems. Halt all expansion into contested regions. Shock passed through the hall. Never before had the Empire chosen restraint. But reality had shifted. The frontier colonies sent gratitude messages, thanking the Empire for the assistance. No one corrected them. The truth was too complex to explain. Days later, the human government transmitted a public statement. We prefer cooperation over conflict, peace over conquest, but imbalance will always be addressed. The message spread across the galaxy. Small civilizations felt relief. Large powers felt caution. The Empire felt humbled. Commander Varric stood alone that night, looking at the stars. He thought about the first battle, the silent strikes, the calm voice that warned him. Humans did not roar like conquerors. They did not celebrate dominance. They prepared quietly, acted precisely, and left without pride. The Empire had learned something rare. True strength was not measured by how much you could destroy, but by how much you could control. And somewhere beyond sight, the human fleets remained ready, not for war, but for balance, watching, waiting, prepared to intervene. If the Empire ever forgot the lesson again. Years passed after the confrontation with humanity. The Empire no longer expanded without calculation. Border systems were reviewed carefully. Military academies began teaching a new doctrine. Do not assume weakness. Do not ignore patience. Do not mistake silence for fear. Commander Varric had grown older. His hair silver, his steps slower, but his mind remained sharp. Young officers now visited him not to celebrate victory, but to learn caution. One evening, a private alert reached the capital, not from borders, not from human space, but from deep, unexplored territory. An unknown fleet was moving toward Imperial regions. Not human, not familiar. Massive ships with heavy weapons. Their signals aggressive. Their trajectory direct. The Empire prepared for war again. Defense fleets mobilized. Battle stations activated. Citizens braced for conflict. For the first time in years, fear returned. This enemy was different. They did not negotiate. They did not pause. They destroyed 2 minor outposts without warning. The Empire responded with full force. Varric was called back to command one last time. As the Imperial fleet approached, the hostile armada tension filled every bridge. This enemy relied on brute strength. They fired heavy beams. They advanced without strategy. They trusted numbers. Battle erupted across the sector. Imperial ships fought hard, but losses mounted quickly. The enemy pushed forward relentlessly. For a moment, it seemed the Empire would collapse under the assault. Then something changed. Dark shapes appeared at the edges of the battlefield. Silent, motionless. Human vessels, not attacking yet, just observing. The hostile fleet shifted focus toward them, firing blindly. Human ships moved with impossible precision. They did not chase. They did not rush. They cut power grids, disabled weapon cores, isolated command ships, exactly as they had once done to the Empire. Within minutes, the invading armada lost coordination. Their largest battleship went dark. Then another. Panic spread through the attackers. They retreated chaotically. Human ships did not pursue far. They simply ensured the threat was neutralized. When the last hostile signal faded, the battlefield grew quiet. Imperial ships drifted damaged but alive. The human fleet remained at a distance. A single transmission opened. This is why balance matters. The voice was calm. Had your empire continued blind conquest, you would have been weakened, divided, easy to destroy. Stability protects all, including you. Varric stood on the bridge, watching the human vessels hold position. He finally understood completely. They had not saved the Empire out of kindness. They had preserved equilibrium. A stable empire was safer than a fallen one. The human fleet prepared to depart. Varric opened a direct channel, this time not as a rival, but as an equal. Your lesson was heard. The human commander gave a small nod. Good. Their ships vanished into darkness, not retreating, not fleeing, simply choosing not to remain. The Imperial fleet returned home victorious, yet humbled. Citizens celebrated survival, but leaders remembered the deeper truth. Years later, statues were built not of conquest, but of restraint. Varric retired from service. His final address to young officers echoed through the academy halls. We once believed power meant control, but control without wisdom invites ruin. Humans taught us that strength must protect, not dominate. Remember this. The galaxy is not owned. It is shared, far beyond map space. Human guardians continued their silent watch. No banners, no glory, only vigilance. No ID, no origin, just patience and a quiet promise that no empire would ever again rise unchecked. Not through fear, but through balance.